Good afternoon. After much expectation and build-up, the former president of this country, Jacob Zuma, finally taking the stand at the Zondo Commission of Inquiry in Parktown here in Johannesburg. If you've been following this, witness after witness directly implicated Zuma in facilitating state capture with the Gupta family. Today, it was his turn to fight back. Zuma says he's nothing more than friends with the controversial family. The former president says it's all part of a greater ANC conspiracy against him. It has been a dramatic morning. Let's pick it up with ENCA presenter Kolya Mgambi, who joins us live from Parktown. Let's start off, Kolya, and good afternoon to you, with those claims of a former senior government minister being an apartheid spy.
Jeremy, it's astounding indeed that the former president has launched into that kind of an attack towards a senior ANC member, Ngwako Ramatloti, who is also a former minister, basically labeling him a spy. He says he was recruited as a student whilst he was in Lesotho. And he doesn't say, though, which or who, what organization he was spying for at that time, Jeremy. So this again goes back to the earlier testimony when the former president was addressing the commission, and he touched on Ngwako Ramatloti, because it's quite clear that Ngwako Ramatloti touched a nerve on Zuma when he came to testify before the Commission of Inquiry, because remember, he used the words that the former president, what he did at the time that he was in office, amounted to auctioning the country off to his friends, the Guptas. Now, Jeremy, when he was talking about Ngwako Ramatloti much earlier, before he came to the allegations of Ngwako Ramatloti being a spy, he says, what an exaggeration by a lawyer that I had auctioned off, and he has a problem with this word auction. So he says, but he's been pushed to a limit. Now, Jeremy, I know you and I are supposed to have this conversation. I'm joined at the moment by the ANC spokesperson, national spokespersons, I should say. It's Mr. Tell us your name again, sir. Pulemabe is joined alongside by Dakota Lehueta, whom I spoke to earlier. Gentlemen, just exactly what is coming out of this Commission of Inquiry. One of your senior members in the party, Ngwako Ramatloti, has just been labelled by the former leader of this party as having been a spy. Is this the kind of thing that you expected to come out of this commission? And what say you as an organization when information like this is going to come out?
Well,
if I could just ask you to bring up the mic a little.
Yes, without necessarily going into the details. Of course, the work of the commission is ongoing. We have already today, as the African National Congress, issued a statement where we're clarifying, amongst others, that the former president did meet with the Secretary General last week to take him into confidence about his appearance, pending appearance to the commission today. It is important that we allow the work of the commission to proceed unhindered. We have always said that those that might have information which could contribute towards strengthening the work of the commission, they should come out. We are encouraged that well within our structures, leaders and members alike have heeded this call. If the ANC must take the stand at a certain point in time, the organization shall be invited, and like it has done in the past, it will effectively be able to speak at that point.
Mr. Mabe, let me quickly cut to the chase.
Yes.
Talk to us here about whether or not these allegations have ever been made inside the ANC corridors, that Ngwako Ramatloti was once a spy. Who might he have been spying for in the first place?
Well, Koli, I'm saying I wouldn't even want to go into the merits or demerits of the allegations that are being made. This is the work of the commission. It is proceeding in that way. The ANC National Executive Committee is not a commission, does not possess those kind of powers itself. When information comes out, and to the extent that such information requires the ANC to formally communicate or take a stand in the commission, at that point, the ANC shall be able to convey its own position.
Mr. Mabe, we'll leave it there for the time being. But Jeremy, let me just say to you that the former president, Jacob Zuma, as you will know, his position in the ANC many years when during the struggle days, he was the chief of intelligence. He was the head of intelligence. And so when allegations like this are brought up by a man who led the intelligence structures of the ANC, I wonder if there is going to be difficulty in trying to refute that kind of information. But as we've just relayed to you, the former president labeling Wako Ramatlodi, a very senior member of the ANC, as having been a spy. He doesn't say who he spied for.
All right, we'll get to some of the other aspects in just a moment, Colby, but now let's rewind, if we can, 3 hours to the arrival of the former president. There was much expectation. Supporters were in the streets supporting him. They'd been pushed away slightly from the main commission precinct, yet when he walked into the hall itself, or to the room itself, there was a rousing round of applause. Former President Zuma himself looking fairly relaxed, wearing a red tie. What did it look like? How did it play out?
Well, Jeremy, I can tell you that the former president has quite a lot of support inside that room. And of course, the key among his supporters are first and foremost his two children that have been quite visible in the last couple of days. Duduzane Zuma, you will know, he recently was acquitted of a couple homicide charge and reckless and negligent driving. He is traveling alongside his twin sister, Duduzile. They are inside the room. And of course, there is the former minister, Des Van Rooyen, the former finance minister, was finance minister for 4 days back in December of 2015. He's here. And you have other people that were set to come by the MKMVA spokesperson, Carl Niehaus. He mentioned people like Supramau Mapelo. So you have a sizable crowd inside that room, Jeremy, that constantly gives an applause. And I can't not mention, Jeremy, the presence here of the regional chairperson of the ANC in the Ekurhuleni region, who's also the mayor of Ekurhuleni, someone who perhaps has been labelled a staunch ally of former President Jacob Zuma. And it's no surprise that Mzwandile Masina is here today. And the Chief Justice, or the Deputy Chief Justice, I should say, who's the chair of the commission, finds himself having to again take the same measure in trying to ask the room to please do not make applause when the former president speaks or when he makes a point that perhaps resonates with you. So the Deputy Chief Justice finds himself in that kind of situation. So the former president has quite a sizable support inside the room, and we understand outside, Jeremy, there are people who come from as far back as KwaZulu-Natal who have been travelling overnight in buses. We don't know how many buses there are.
Towards the lunch break, Koli, we then heard about a foreign plot to oust him, driven by intelligence agencies, and also a plan to kill him, I think he said, at a stadium in Durban. Again, we've heard that before, haven't we? Or we've at least heard allusion to that before.
Jeremy, we have heard of certain plots to kill the former president. In fact, he alludes to a poisoning plot, which he says finally came to fruition. I think if memory serves me well, it must have been in 2015, and there was an allegation that his wife, one of his wife, may have been involved, and it resulted in her being kicked out of the Nkandla homestead by the then Minister of Intelligence. But it would appear that those relations have now been mended, but the former president seems to attribute that poisoning plot to the foreign, or to the work of foreign spies, if you like, Jeremy, because remember, what he's been telling the commission from the start is that the intelligence, or 3 intelligence organizations, have been plotting against him and have sought to hatch this narrative that sought to discredit him, that sought to make him look like a person who is corrupt. And that's why he even remarks during his address that perhaps the reason I find myself in this room with this commission of inquiry into state capture, which he finds problematic in the first place, he says that perhaps it is the work of these 3 organizations working in tandem, Jeremy, and you will have to hear this working in tandem with some of the comrades inside the ANC. And he says that this dates back to as far back as the 1990s when he was still head of ANC intelligence, but also part of the negotiating team during the negotiation settlement in the country back then.
And Koi, he's never bought the notion of state capture. I think he used the word exaggeration today. And also, as far as the Guptas are concerned, playing that old line that they're all just good chums.
Jeremy, he says that these people were friends with the former president, the late president now, Nelson Mandela, the founding president of Democratic South Africa. He says that these people even had stronger relations. These are his words, or the word he used is stronger relations with his predecessor, Thabo Mbeki. And he says that these are people that were even comrades of the ANC. They were members of the ANC. They never had problems with this family to begin with. But why should there be problems with this family when they suddenly form a relationship with him and, of course, with one of his children, his sons, Duduzane, who happens to be a business partner? He even says that the leadership of the ANC in Gauteng were among those who introduced the Guptas to him, having been introduced to the Guptas, of course, during his time, he says, when he was deputy president of the country, and he was introduced to the Guptas by the then minister in the presidency, Eso Pahad, who himself had a particular business relationship with this Gupta family.
Koi, describe the atmosphere for us today. What's it been like?
Jeremy, I've got to tell you that it's been quite interesting, to say the least. I'm trying to find the exact word to attach to this, because he himself, the man of the moment, former President Jacob Zuma, says that perhaps the reason you have so much interest here today is because of my presence here. And it's no mistake that you have such a large interest in this commission of inquiry. And he says that the atmosphere, as you say, Jeremy, or as you ask of me, is quite it's a very interesting one, Jeremy, because there's lots of interest in this particular case. You have Andile Mngxitama, who is the leader of the BLF, having been blocked from entering the premises earlier because of the regalia. No one is allowed to wear party regalia inside. Then we were told this by one of the ANC spokespersons, saying that you're not allowed to wear party regalia. So the atmosphere, Jeremy, is perhaps tense at times, and at times a bit light because of some of the things that the former president says. But there's a silence in the room that I can't describe, Jeremy, as full as that room is there today. But you can literally hear a penny drop when the former president is speaking, because everyone seems to be listening to his every word and hanging on to his every word that he uses, particularly against those that he seems to be aggrieved against. And there is a particular mention, Jeremy, of people like the former NPA head, Bulelani Ngcuka, and there's no surprises there, because if you listen to Mxolisi Nxasana and the interview that he gave with this particular station, ENCA, he says that when he hears the name Bulelani Ngcuka, he goes mad. That's according to the account of Mxolisi Nxasana. There is the former Justice Minister, Penal Maduna, that when he evokes his name, you can see there's a particular expression in his face. And there's a Scorpions official that would have been accompanying ahead of the Pulogwane conference, accompanying Bulelani Ngcuka and Penal Maduna. That official, Jeremy, although he hasn't named him yet, but I have a very strong suspicion that he's talking about Leonard McCarthy, who is very much implicated in as far as the spy tape saga is concerned.
All right, that's some nice, astute observation, Koli. Just if you can, I want you to set the geography for me very quickly. Use hand movements if you want. You're in the precinct just outside the Commission of Inquiry. That's where President, or the former president, has been testifying. His supporters, as we mentioned, have been outside, but some distance away, I understand, from where you're reporting. We're going to go to your colleague, Govind Whittles, in just a moment. But roughly, where are the supporters being housed in comparison to where you're standing right now?
Jeremy, it's not too far at all from the commission venue. It's perhaps just 2 streets away, if you like. There's a BP garage that is adjacent to this particular venue. And then when you cross the street, it's a big intersection. It's a 4-way intersection. On the other side of that intersection is the Peter Roos Park. And that's where we understand many of the supporters who have come from far and wide, we are told, are going to be stationed. There is the expectation that the former president may go and make an address there once he has completed here. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, it's quite possible that he may go there during this lunchtime, because perhaps if he holds it too late, he might not get the opportunity to address them. So that is the geography in terms of the members of the public who have come to support the former president.
All right.